Alrighty, daily trading recap. Let's get after it here on this Thursday, the 24th of March, 2022. To Christ be the glory, as always. Dollar volume first before we get into the craziness that is the thumbnail today. NASDAQ, $186 billion volume as of a minute after the close here. Nicey, $222 billion volume. OTCs, $1.6 billion volume on the day, looking like a little bit to the low side there in regards to interest in overall markets. But yeah, and even popping up on the scanners, nothing really going crazy or piquing my interest hard for any breakouts or movers or first screen days, anything crazy like that. I think I'll go actually start with DPRO, just talk about this one trade that I did take, a very speculative 100 shares that I did take for a potential third day move. A little bit of a higher floater, 30 million floater if I believe. 31 million float is shown on scans here. And they did have the really, really good news catalyst for the drones making for Ukraine that's going to be sent over there. And so not like there's just going to be so many shorts bagged in on this thing. That short move already really happened on that first screen day to the downside there before the close. Second day, like it's holding and looks like it could or should be this nice little third day surge for any amount of squeeziness or buying pressure. But it's, I look back at the chart today and really think, okay, yeah, I could have totally expected to see that as well. And there just really was not a lot else that I was so keyed in on it, but this was kind of the best of the bunch. And I said, well, maybe because it is the best of the bunch, then maybe I should throw a little bit of size at it or see if there's any potential. But that should never be my thesis for a trade, just because it is the best of the bunch that I should be taking a trade. If I don't like it or don't think there is or should be high conviction in that trade, then I shouldn't be taking it. But that's learning lessons for each of these days as well, and that's why I'm keeping that size relatively small. A little bit too big of a loss that I took there for buying in that third minute, as I thought it was getting a little bit of push and hoping to start escalating or pushing it from there. That would have been the move since it was opening above VWAP, but sure enough, reclaim, and that eventually broke this little 243 kind of arbitrary level that developed itself during market hours today, intraday, that became my stop for those 100 shares there. That was DPRO. So now in the, of course, just craziness of the day, I did chicken out again. I mentioned yesterday's daily training recap of the session backtesting automated strategy that I'm going for with through the modality of futures and ES and MES on the S&P 500. That starts getting me an entry right at that open of 1800. That would be 6 o'clock Eastern time. And then playing for percentages or points based off of that and factoring all those in, what the potential loss would be if I didn't reach those points, yada, yada, yada. Saved myself yesterday. I've taken a huge loss, account-ending loss yesterday of having to play. Had I continued on with that strategy, but carrying on that little thought of, gosh, we're on the 6th green day. I think there's going to be a potential red day tomorrow that it might not produce it that much, or it might not produce that price target that I want to see. God, I think I'll take off here, just risk, whatever it was that at that point. Save myself a big, big loss. And I don't, I kick myself for that. But of course, then in the same light, I also thank myself because now that offered me the opportunity to trade today and still allowed me to have an account to trade with. But then coming into today on that same thing, that now I do that same type of strategy. I do that same strategy yesterday at 1800. Looking for that same daily strategy, looking for 10 points. That's what it is right now. Just keeping myself accountable to that of, hey, I look for, get immediately filled right at that as we open at 6 o'clock, and then look for 10 points based on that. And that's just parameters I've established. Very easy, rudimentary type of trade, and how it's calculated on the days that don't hit it, based also along with the hit rate of the amount of times that it does throughout the entire session. It ends up working out as a profitable trade. So with all of these automated trades, I have to keep that time perspective in sight. And I cut myself short for how it was moving. I'll pull up the ES chart here. For how we opened, we came like within 1 point. And I almost so coincidentally came to the screen right at this point that we were like 1 point away from me getting filled wherever it found my entry here, right at that initial point, from 10 points away. That it was just so freaking close. And then it just started to hover a little bit. And then my temptation is there, like, okay, I can't be fooling around and playing emotionally. This is why I make it an automated trade, so I'm not involved with it whatsoever. That's one of my rule sets, is not to trade the P&L. It's to trade the trade. I would be cutting the trade short. I would be screwing myself over. Even if this thing turns into a loss, that would be factored in and a part of the trade. But coming off of the success that I had yesterday of kind of saving myself a lot of that and getting into the FOMO is not the phrase that I want to use with this one, but just of wanting to secure profits as they were there. now adjusting my stop to say, okay, since we just came so close, then I'm going to move I'm going to add a stop, which I don't normally do with this strategy. I have to let it do and grow what it wants to do, like I'll mention on my 930 strategy that produced the big loss today. But put my stop back at a break even, and sure enough, it clings right to that, immediately peeling off of that high attempt there and then stopping me out. And I had some other complications with it, but yeah, stopped me out at that point and got a tick off of that trade. So I get $12. And I'm thinking, whoa, sweet. Okay, well, if it fades and it just continues to fall off and that was the only thing, then I'm going to look like a hero and a genius, and I save myself a heck of a lot more money as well. But sure enough, it holds and continues to press. What's that? 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours later, even coming in today and even closing at the end of the market session. How many points is that? I can't even do that math live. 60 points that were still above it. Not that I would be looking for that as a profit target, but that's just how much more. So I was in the wrong, or cowering to the fear monger for this type of trade. I'm not letting the trade run and prove itself and succumbing to the whims and temptations of my own emotion, which is not what I want to do. And that's why I get these automated strategies, is so I can't do that. So learning lesson there, missed out on $500 in that one, but gained the knowledge bank again of, this is why we establish the trade parameters and we understand the guidelines beforehand. It's why we don't mess around, fool around. It's why we don't do what we did yesterday in cutting ourselves off, even though I did come out victorious and save myself a huge loss. But that's why we don't chop ourselves short. We don't cut that hit rate short, because then we're screwing over all the data. And now we're just in this unforeseen territory that it's just a wasteland, because now I have zero backtested data and it's a completely new frontier, right? To steal the quote from Star Trek. So drastically changing the hit rate and the entire trade in itself, when I want to then throw my own emotion on it in real time, versus the data that I've collected backtesting and the amount of work that's gone into producing this, just what looks like a very rudimentary system on the surface, but what has been put through the ringer and just continually fine-tuned. Cutting that short is just a catastrophe, a tragedy, and I can't see myself doing that again. I will be going forward, obviously, for the big loss that I took today. That was half of the account. But because of this and because of that emotion I was feeling, I'm going to be downsizing to the one MES contract, just to be saving myself that worry and fret right now. Not so much that, but understanding the new reality of this trade man, I can't be sustaining these unrealized losses with this type of account size. I can be continually just building. When it works out well, then it just continues to build. But like I've learned so early in the month of February and now in March here as well, when it doesn't work out, those losses just suck and drain the crap out of everything. And it's not my fault. It's just kind of timing of when these things start to happen. And that's going to bleed into what I'll mention here with the 930. A little move there in a little bit, but yeah, learning lessons all around. And so now for this 930 strategy that I've been doing, past 2-3 weeks consistently, of putting in that automated strategy, letting it run. It failed at one point when I was doing one thing. I think that was Monday that happened, but worked very well, beautifully today, looking for 2 points immediately where I get filled. Within milliseconds of the open there, I like that timing and like to be able to fine-tune that there with that NinjaTrader system. Forget what the exact fill that I had was. I think it was 4467 something. So obviously looking for 4469. Immediately we start to tank. It was just hovering within that first minute, and the thoughts or emotions going there were, okay, it's struggling to go here. How many times have we seen it that first minute candle becomes the high for the 15 to 30 minute time frame that becomes my stop? It's not so much a risk variable stop against me in terms of points, but just a based on the probability of time frames of price potentially being able to reach these specific key levels. And this exact chart is a great example of why we do this. Unfortunately, then factoring in of how perfectly the stock market just knows me and just wants to get me, right? This thing falls perfectly. I'm like, when I say perfectly, I mean perfectly to the bottom here, where my exact intraday margin requirements dry up. And I did not realize in the moment, but it stopped me out. And of course, then now I'm taking another $50 in commissions because of having to stop me out, I think. But I was just trying to watch that very close and being able to quick the trigger before that would have happened. But sure enough, it just barely ticks. And I don't think I realized it at the time, but in the little bit of confusion in the price as it's pulling just a little bit further here down below 4458, that it actually only stopped me out of one contract, and that reduced my overall risk and gave me $500 in the margin requirements, and then reduced my overall risk on that trade just enough to keep me in that moment. And obviously it was just within milliseconds, and I didn't realize that at the time. But then now, as I'm still trying to click buttons and just get me out of the trade and say, okay, I screwed up, this is stupid, get me out, that the thought is always there that, oh my gosh, I'm just cutting this strategy short. That feeling is just there that this thing is just going to bottom so quick and rip right back up to 10 points beyond where it opened. And just the confusion of having to see that big red number, having it stopped out, and knowing that just the stupidity with all of that, taking another shot like this of the times I've done that before. And then to see it, sure enough, within 3, 6, 7, 8 minutes later, doing exactly that. And the temptation was there, I know, too, as I was watching it, of, okay, as it was hovering, just short of VWAP. If I was still in the position that I had enough margin to still be holding through this sustained unrealized P&L, the thought was there, oh, okay, it's reclaimed a VWAP. Maybe that becomes a turning point that I potentially would have taken off there. If I was still in it, I could have seen myself doing that as I was watching the tape in real time. But sure enough, beautifully offers the opportunity to hit the profit targets that I had set, that had automatically been set with the order itself. Working the strategy beautifully. And it happened 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more times, 6 times in total before my time risk factor would have been hit for the day. So it's just tough. That's just how the cookie crumbles. And I can blame myself that say, I shouldn't have been doing this strategy. And of course, this was the day too. I forgot to mention that I went with 3 full-size ES contracts instead of just the normal 2 that I normally look for with this strategy. And today, for just some reason, I said, okay, let's go ahead and do 3. And of course, this is the one that just the perfect storm that just somehow magically knew and attracted itself to that exact perfect number that for me was going to stop me out there, and then perfectly right back up to where my profit target was on those. That's just how the cookie crumbles. That is this game in its entirety, and it's not about being right, because I was right. And of course, I have to keep, like I alluded to a little bit with the daily strategy, it is a time perspective with this specific strategy, that it's not about the singular day of making money. It's the collection of the hit rate of all the days, and of course, compiling those in with the losers. But just unfortunate that this one had to turn into a loser when it was just a beautiful winner. This is the reason why I can't do stops on the session, on those session trades, because things can be so incredibly wonky and crazy and still go 1% in the red and then still turn green on the day of just, vice versa, the craziness there. But in the same way of these ones that can never judge a book by its cover and just fall into the lion trap of the panic or the FOMO, either way, oh man, it's just another collection, another notch in the belt, another feather in the hat, another tool in the tool belt to be able to realize these types of situations. And there's going to be many and a plenty more days like this. And it gives me great joy and hope for the future to know that, how much this loss hurts. Of course, this isn't my biggest loss that I've taken as of yet, but just even to know, it still hurts, obviously, to even know that even this loss, even the biggest loss I've had right now, is going to be nowhere near close to the biggest loss that I ever have in my trading career, of where I will take this thing. Just gives me, that great satisfaction, and realigns my own perspective with that time perspective in the overall scheme of this trading career, that it isn't about the singular day. One good trade doesn't make me a good trader, and one bad trade doesn't make me a bad trader. But then also pairing that alongside with, it's not one trade that makes my career. It's not just one singular trade, and obviously not a pattern. But one specific trade doesn't make my entire career, but one bad trade can absolutely end my career. So carrying myself with that, I don't know another word other than fear, or timidness. That's probably not the most appropriate word in this sense, but carrying that respect for the market in everything I do, but continually pursuing and making sure, as us little mice are just continuing to run around and search for these little tiny scraps of cheese along the floor, that the hammer isn't coming down on us. So it's just a never-ending game, and I'm excited for it, and I'm thankful for the continual beatings that come on me this way. They are certainly making me stronger and forcing me to be a better version of myself. So that is really all that I had on the day, just trying to keep it nice, quick, and simple. No other hard tickers popping up on the scanner for me that are going to be really hard in play as of right now for tomorrow. But yeah, that's just all I really want to talk about today. I sincerely thank you guys for watching. We will catch you guys on the next one.